Welcome to the Working Genius podcast, where we discuss anything and everything related to the 6 types of working genius and how it impacts your work and your life. I'm Pat Lencioni. I'm your host today, joined by my colleagues at the Working Genius Project, Cody Thompson.
How's it going?
Tracy Noble.
Hi, Pat.
And Matt Lencioni.
Hi, Pat.
How you doing, guys? So, Cody, what's our title today?
The title is The Language of Work.
That's right, the language of work. And we've found that when a team really starts using the Working Genius model, the geniuses transform from nouns to verbs. What I mean is that people start to incorporate the different kinds of genius into their vocabulary around what they're actually doing. We've heard this from some of the more than 100,000 people who have taken the assessment. I think it's actually almost 100,000 people that have taken the assessment. And we've seen it here in our offices. And we do it all the time in my home, my wife and I, and even our kids. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it really is pretty amazing how, like, if we're now like fluent in this language now. And the reason it's the language of work is because these are the 6 activities of getting something done. And when a team like ours has adopted that, we end up saying, hey, I'm doing this right now. I'm wondering right now, or I'm Wing, and we start to use it as a verb. And this is sort of framed up how we interact with each other.
And I think the most powerful thing about this is that we really prevent misunderstanding, and we get much more clarity, and that helps build trust. I know at home, we have avoided some kind of difficult moments because my wife or I will say, oh, I'm just eyeing right now. Mm-hmm. Or my wife will throw something out there. I'm thinking she's asking me to do something. I'm like, what? And she's like, I'm just Wing, I'm wondering. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. I can calm down and understand where she's coming from. Where in the past, I might have assumed that she had already come to the conclusion that we needed to act on something. It really helps avoid misunderstanding. And it's one of my favorite things about the Working Genius model.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and having context for every conversation is so important. So when Cody, you say to me, I'm not G'ing right now, I'm discerning. It's so important for me to have that context. Like, oh, okay, great. We're trying to figure this out together. He's not trying to activate me.
Yeah, it's interesting because like we had a meeting about the website this morning, and I was trying to figure out a solution in my mind, but I'm a verbal processor. And so I was like looking at people and I could tell they were like, okay, am I supposed to do something with this? And I was like, no, I'm just discerning what we should do. Don't go run out and do that thing. And that happens all the time. I think what you shared, Pat, which is that this prevents us from misunderstanding. There has been previous times without this language where you'd come up with an idea, you're inventing, you're eyeing, and then we start poking holes in it or trying to bring it down. And without this language, it's like once you have the language, this is about additive. This is like, oh, are we doing the next step in the work process? Are we discerning right now? And without that, it can feel like, oh, they always seem to attack my ideas, or they always try to poke holes in them. And if we can get to a place where everyone speaks the same language, then you can go, oh, this is actually helpful in this moment.
Remember the guy who wrote to us and said he was frustrated because he always thought his wife kind of didn't like him. Yeah. And he was joking about it because every time he'd come up with an idea, she would kind of criticize it. And finally they said, oh my gosh, I've been discerning. That's it. And you thought I was criticizing you. Now that couple can say, oh, let me give you some discernment here. And he can receive it the way it's really intended and not take it wrong. And that's what we mean by using it in vocabulary.
Well, and so Matt, you've done this since we had the Working Genius. You actually created a little space for yourself. What did you call it?
Mm-hmm. My cave.
But the T zone.
Yeah,
right?
The T zone. When I need to do anything that involves tenacity, like crank something out, I always sit somewhere else or go into my T zone, and just acknowledging that it's my weakness and that I can actually go spend a certain amount of time working under that in a separate area makes it a lot easier for me to get stuff done and crank stuff out.
Right. And can you imagine if we said, where's Matt? Oh, he's back in the conference room again. What's he doing? Now we know, oh, he's teeing. Mm-hmm. That's not one of his things. That's his frustration. He needs to get it done. And we suddenly go, good for him for going in there, not, well, what's that guy doing over there? Mm-hmm. And it just having this vocabulary really helps with that.
Well, and that's one of the observations, like the way I've seen our team use this tool and I've seen other teams adopt this is that because you now have this 6-stage framework of work, then even ideally what you do is you have people that have genius in all 6 of those areas. But I've actually been in conversations. One of my favorite things that Amy does now, Amy's working frustration is galvanizing. But because we know how work happens now, what she'll do in moments where she has to galvanize, she's never going to be a true, authentic galvanizer. She's never going to get try to push people and be, inspire them in that moment.
It's just not her thing.
What she does now, which is a budget version of this, which is just as effective, as she's like, I'm G'ing you right now. So she will say, this is as good as I can do, but this needs to get done. I'm G'ing you. Please do it. You know?
When she says that, we tend to listen because we're like, well, this is outside of her comfort zone.
Right.
And that's exactly right. For people that are naturally inventing, they can say, hey, I'm just inventing. Remember, I'm not doing this other thing. Or people who don't like to do a thing, they can say, I'm really stepping out here and doing something I don't like to do.
Yep.
Please honor that because this is not easy.
Totally.
Without that vocabulary, we would just blow her off.
And it's different than we did a podcast on meetings, because meetings have a particular context sometimes, whether it's a brainstorming meeting, but this is happening in the hallways, in every conversation. In a Zoom meeting I had this morning where I was, I'm an out loud processor and I had to say, I don't want you to do anything with this yet. So it really is this language that we speak where Tracy can go, oh, where are we in this stage of like our Working Genius certification? That's what we're working on right now. And she's like, oh, we need you to G this right now. So it gives the language and context for where we're at in the process, and then ability for us to like bring people in and use that gift in that exact moment.
That's right. It's, we don't like to talk about the word efficiency, but it's almost like this crazy efficiency and effectiveness tool,
right?
Using this language.
Well, efficiency is great if it's not cutting into your effectiveness. And when you're being really effective, the more efficient you can be, the better. And this just is a shortcut to really talking about what needs to get done. The other thing about this vocabulary is that you can use it when you need to tell somebody not to do their genius. Like you can say, hey, Pat, we're beyond the invention mode. We are close to implementation. And I know you're an inventor, but that's actually not what we need right now.
Yep.
And that doesn't feel like a slight to me or a criticism. It feels like a call to action to move on to the next stage.
Totally. That's a really good point. I because we've used that a lot, because it used to feel like a criticism. It used to be like, hey, Cody, stop galvanizing before we didn't have the word, or you're galvanizing the wrong thing. Now that we have that language, it's like, oh yeah, okay, let me go back. Am I actually galvanizing the thing we all discerned was the right thing? Or Amy, I remember in many meetings where she's a wonder, like a true wonder, and she would ask a question that seemed discombobulating. And it was that very thing, like, oh, if I had just had the language to say, hey, I like that you're wondering, but I think we're already in this, we're in the enablement phase of the project.
Right.
Now might not be the right time. I think before it had the potential to be hurtful, and now it has the potential to just help us keep moving more quickly in the right direction.
Well, it's like you said, it's like those assumptions that we would make about her intentions when she brings that kind of thing up. By using the language, we're jumping in front of those assumptions and making it a lot easier to avoid misunderstandings like that.
Totally.
Exactly. And to make her feel like she's doing something that's slowing us down when in fact we need her to do that.
Well, and that's the point is that we say this a lot, but it's worth repeating over and over again, is you need all six.
Yep.
And so, but you don't need all six at every moment of work. And even on teams, like an ideal thing would be to have them all represented. But when you have the language, you can kind of shortcut it if you need to, and some of them you can't. Like, I don't think you can go like, hey, we're eyeing right now. It's like, you can't just say I'm eyeing right now and not have something come from that. But on the ones that, I've adopted Matt's tea station, where I'll take the stuff and I'm like, I'm going in here to do tea work. And for what that means to the people on our team is, yeah, you can probably interrupt if there's something in the WI phase that we should be talking about, Sure.
And for me, I think it makes it more enjoyable when I'm in the T zone. Like I can focus on, and it makes my job that much more enjoyable.
Right. And for you, that's not your working genius. It's your working competency. And we always pushed you there. Now, when you're doing that, you can go, this isn't my favorite thing. It's necessary. I'm going to cordon off this amount of time, and I'm really going to focus. And even me, who has tea as a frustration, I hate it. I can do it when I have to. That's what we do when I write. We lock me in a hotel room and say, don't come out until 30 pages are done.
Right.
That's right. You did that last week, in fact. You were cranking on the book.
And it exhausted me.
It reminds me a little bit of when we talk about meeting stew, which we covered a little bit, but like it's sort of work stew if you don't have compartments for these things.
Yeah.
I used to bounce between wonder and invention and discernment and galvanize all the way around, but not really have any bearings about where I was. So it's whatever the opposite of discombobulating it is. Is
It's
it
combobulating.
It's very combobulating.
There's a vocabulary word.
Yeah, it eliminates every aimless conversation
Right.
that we don't know exactly why we're having it.
And so many conversations in the world of work are aimless because we just show up and we go to our natural place. Instead of saying, what do we need to be doing this meeting? We just go, well, you show up and you wonder and you invent and you discern and you galvanize. And it really is a mess. And so this is a good way to help. And boy, at home, this happens all the time and can really cause struggle in a relationship. I know just this weekend, this was Easter weekend, and Laura is like amazing at these events, but she has these big ideas about what she wants to do, and it's all over the place. And I'm like, oh, I think I need some discernment. I don't think you need that 5th dish to make for everybody coming over. And Laura's like, but wouldn't it be great if we had this and this and this? And I realize, oh yeah, I can come alongside and say, let's discern how many different main dishes we need to make for the 12 people coming over.
Well, and if we didn't have the language, that can just look like criticism. You know?
Absolutely.
And so that's what this has done really well for our team, is to go, oh, okay, I'm helping you because this is the process of work. I'm helping us move this along.
Yeah. The last thing is, and it goes right with this, when we say, hey, I'm not G'ing you right now, I'm eyeing you. You can also say, I need your discernment, not your enablement.
Yeah.
Because that's what used to happen here is I'm an inventor naturally. A lot of the people here, Tracy, Amy, and Karen, have enablement in them. And I would say something and they would go, all right, let's do it. And it's not just enough for me to say, I'm not galvanizing you. It's to say, please, I'm really looking for your discernment. And that's really going to help me right now.
Yeah. And it has to happen in those stages. Like if we did actually, you invented a handful of things that we went right to enablement. And
they weren't
then
that
later
good.
on, we had to go back and go, oh, look, this is where we missed it. D comes right after I, and you can't skip that. And G comes right after D. And so it really is, I love that, because it's totally true where you can say, oh, I'm not eyeing you, but the opposite is true where you can say, I don't need your E, or I don't need the T right now. We're not in T zone right now.
Right. Well, my discernment tells me we've done a pretty good job of describing this, so I'm going to galvanize us to bring this to a close. Does that sound all right?
That sounds great.
All right. So we hope that's helpful. Remember, these are words you want to be using every day. Hey, I'm galvanizing right now. I'm T'ing right now. We need more W right now. Can you please W for us? So that it becomes verbs and vocabulary, and it can really help at home, at work, and in your personal life. All right. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. We're glad to have you. We'll look forward to talking to you next time on, what do we call this? The Working Genius Podcast. God bless.